I'm Sandra Kowalski, 28 years old, and for 2.5 years, I cooked, cleaned, and drove for my brother's 3 kids while he and his wife acted like I owed them my entire existence. My photography business had just folded, equipment loans I couldn't repay, a studio lease I had to break, and moving into their spare room felt like a temporary fix. It wasn't. It became a trap with a welcome mat. My alarm went off at 6:15 every morning. Not because I had anywhere to be, because 8-year-old Tyler needed breakfast before the bus, and 5-year-old Maya needed her hair done, and 3-year-old Eli screamed if he woke up and nobody was in the kitchen. My brother, Dominic, left for his construction site at 5:45. His wife, Rena, worked the early shift at the hospital. She was a billing coordinator, not a nurse, though she loved implying otherwise. And she was out the door by 6 school. So the mornings were mine, every single one of them. Tyler was a good kid, mostly. He'd eat whatever I put in front of him without complaining, which put him ahead of his siblings. Maya had a phase where she refused anything that wasn't yellow. Eggs? Yes. Banana? Yes. Blueberries? Absolutely not, even if I picked every single one out of the muffin. And Eli. Eli was the kind of 3-year-old who made you understand why some animals eat their young. Not mean, just relentless. Always moving, always needing, always somehow sticky. I loved them. That's the part people don't understand when they hear this story. I genuinely loved those kids. Which is exactly why it took me so long to see what was happening to me. I'd moved in with a plan. 6 months, I told myself. Save some money. Rebuild my portfolio. Get back on my feet. I'd been shooting weddings and corporate headshots for 3 years, built up a decent client base, and then I got ambitious. Signed a lease on a studio space in Phoenix. Took out a loan for a second camera setup. And then a corporate client who'd prepaid for 6 months of headshots went bankrupt. Just like that, my cash flow collapsed. I couldn't cover the studio rent and my own apartment simultaneously, so I gave up the apartment. Moving in with Dominic and Rena was supposed to be a bridge, not a destination. Except nobody told me the bridge had a toll. It started small, the way it always does. Rena asked if I could drop the kids at school on Tuesdays because her shift started early. Sure. Then it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. Then it was every day because the routine is better for the kids. Then it was pickups too because after school care was expensive and I was home anyway. Then it was dinner on the nights Dominic worked late, which became 3 nights a week. Then 4. I stopped counting at some point because counting made it too real. I was working part-time in a print shop downtown to $16 an hour, 25 hours a week, and trying to rebuild my photography on the side. I'd get the kids down by 8:30 and spend the next 2 hours editing photos on my laptop at the kitchen table, emailing potential clients, updating my website. By the time I went to bed, it was close to midnight. By 6:15, the alarm was going off again. My friend Claudette, who shot events downtown and had been telling me for months I was being used, finally said it plainly one evening when I called her from the backyard. You're their nanny, Sandra. Unpaid. With no days off. It's family, I said. Which is what I always said. Family doesn't mean free labor, she said. Do they ever ask how your business is going? Do they ever watch the kids so you can shoot a weekend event? I didn't answer because the answer was no. I was spending money too. Not just time. Gas for the school runs, which added up to nearly $80 a month. Groceries when Rena forgot to shop, which was at least twice a month. Tyler's cleats when Dominic kept forgetting to order them online. Eli's nebulizer refills when his asthma kicked up and nobody had gotten around to picking up the prescription. I tallied it once in a notes app late at night, roughly $400 over the past 2 months out of my own savings. My savings that were already thin from the business collapse. The thing about Dominic was that he wasn't cruel. He wasn't some villain twirling a mustache. He was just checked out. He'd come home from work, crack a beer, watch football, and sort of drift through the evening like the kids were scenery rather than people he was responsible for. Rena was more present, but she had this way of framing everything, every ask, every expectation, like she was doing me a favor by letting me contribute. You're so natural with them, she'd say, in that particular tone that meant, keep doing exactly what you're doing and don't stop. I started noticing things I'd been too tired to see before, like the fact that neither of them had ever once offered to cover my gas, or that when Maya had a school performance on a Thursday night, it was assumed I'd be there. Not asked, assumed. And Dominic and Rena showed up 20 minutes late and left early because they had dinner plans. Or that when I mentioned I'd gotten an inquiry about a weekend wedding shoot in Scottsdale, Rena had gotten this pinched look and said, That's the same weekend as Eli's birthday party, though. As if I was obligated to miss paid work for a 3-year-old's birthday party in my brother's backyard. I didn't take the job. I told myself it was a conflict. Really, I just didn't have the energy to fight about it. The night everything changed, I was in the kitchen doing homework with Tyler when Dominic came in with Rena behind him. They both had this look, that particular couple look where they've clearly talked about something beforehand and decided together. It made my stomach tighten before either of them opened their mouths. Dominic sat down at the table across from me. Rena leaned against the counter. We'd been thinking, Dominic said, about the new baby. I looked up from Tyler's math worksheet. What new baby? Rena smiled. Not a warm smile. A smile like someone confirming a meeting time. We're expecting. 12 weeks. Baby number 4. I made myself say congratulations. It came out flat and I could see Rena register it, but she kept the smile going. Here's the thing, Dominic said, lacing his fingers on the table. With 4 kids, we really need things to be more structured around here. We were thinking it'd make more sense for you to drop the print shop hours and be here full-time for the kids, at least until the baby's settled. I set Tyler's pencil down. You want me to quit my job? It's part-time, Rena said. It's not like it's a career, and you'd still have your photography stuff on the side. My photography stuff, I repeated. You know what I mean. We'd cover groceries, obviously, and we thought it's fair if you contribute a little more to the household. Maybe $350 a month toward utilities and bills. You're saving on rent, so it evens out. I stared at her. You want me to quit my job and pay you $350 a month? Dominic rubbed the back of his neck. It's not coming from nowhere. Childcare for 4 kids would run us $3,000 a month easy. We're not asking you to do this for nothing. You're literally asking me to do it for negative money, I said. My voice had gone very quiet, the way it does when I'm actually angry, rather than just frustrated. I'd be losing my income and paying you on top of it. Tyler had gone very still beside me. I pushed back from the table and said I needed some air and walked out to the backyard before I said everything I was thinking in front of an 8-year-old. I called Claudette from the patio. It was 60 degrees and I was in a t-shirt and I didn't care. They want me to quit the print shop, I said, and pay $350 a month to live here. There was a pause. Sandra. I know. You need to leave. I know. Not in 2 months. Not when it's convenient. You need to find a place and get out. I knew she was right. I'd known it for a while, really. But knowing something and doing something are 2 different things, especially when 3 children you love are inside the house and you're terrified that if you leave, nobody's going to braid Maya's hair right, or remember that Tyler needs his retainer every night, or notice when Eli's breathing gets shallow. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay on top of my bed with my laptop and started looking at apartments in Phoenix. Studios were running $1,100 to $3,000 a month. Was my print shop income about $1,600 a month take-home after taxes? I could make it work if I was careful. No eating out. No new equipment. I'd need to pick up at least 1 photography client a month to build any kind of buffer. It was tight. It was doable. I told Dominic the next morning while the kids were eating breakfast that I needed to think about the arrangement and I'd have an answer by the weekend. He nodded like he thought the answer was going to be yes. That week I talked to Tyler alone. Not about everything. He was 8, not my therapist. But I told him I might be getting my own place soon. He looked at me with those serious brown eyes and said, because of Mom and Dad's new baby? Kids see more than adults give them credit for. I told him it wasn't because of the baby exactly, but that I needed to have my own space. He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, will you still come to my games? Every single one, I said. Maya cried when I told her, burying her face in my shoulder. I held her and promised I wasn't going anywhere far, just across the city, and I'd see her all the time. She made me promise to video call her before school on the days I wasn't there. I said yes before she finished asking. Eli didn't really understand. I tried to explain it in simple terms. He looked at me very seriously and said, but who will make my eggs? Which made me laugh and cry at the same time. I found a studio apartment in a building 4 miles from Dominic's house. $1,150 a month, utilities included, available the first of the month. I put down a deposit with the last of my usable savings, signed the lease on a Wednesday afternoon, and didn't tell Dominic and Rena until that evening. Rena's face went through about 5 emotions in 3 seconds. She landed on cold. That's very impulsive. I've been thinking about it for a while, I said. Dominic looked at the floor. What about the kids? They have 2 parents, I said. I'll still be in their lives, but I can't keep doing this at the expense of my own. Rena's voice hardened. We took you in when you had nowhere to go. This is how you repay us. I didn't take the bait. I just said I'd be out by the end of the month and went to my room. Moving day was quiet. Claudette helped me load my car in a rented cargo van. It didn't take long. I'd never accumulated much in the spare room, always feeling like a guest rather than a resident. Tyler helped carry boxes to the elevator and hugged me in the parking lot for a long time without saying anything. Maya gave me a drawing she'd made of the 2 of us standing in front of a purple house. Eli handed me a plastic dinosaur and told me to keep it at my new place so we'd have something to visit. I drove away feeling lighter than I had in 2 years. And terrified. But mostly lighter. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sergeant Okonkwo from the Phoenix Police Department. We've received a complaint from Marina at this address, and she recited Dominic's address, alleging that you removed items belonging to her family when you vacated the premises. She's saying a tablet, some children's clothing, and approximately $200 in cash from a kitchen drawer. I sat down on my air mattress. I hadn't bought a real bed yet and took a slow breath. That's not accurate, I said. I took only my own belongings. You're welcome to come see what I have here. Sergeant Okonkwo came with a partner the next afternoon. They walked through my studio apartment in about 4 minutes. There was a mattress, a folding table, my camera equipment, my laptop, my clothes, and Eli's dinosaur. No tablet, no children's clothing, no cash. Did you have access to the kitchen drawer where the cash was allegedly kept? The sergeant asked. I lived there for 2.5 years, I said. I had access to the whole house, but I didn't take anything. She made notes. She asked a few more questions. Then her partner, who'd been quiet the whole time, looked up from his notepad and said, The tablet, do you know what kind it was? I did, actually. It was the old fire tablet Dominic had bought Tyler 2 Christmases ago. I'd seen it last week on Tyler's bed. I told the officer that. He nodded slowly. Before they left, Sergeant Okonkwo said, was follow-up. Filing a false police report is a criminal matter. I'd encourage the complainant to be certain about her facts. I sat alone in my apartment after they left, my hands shaking a little. Not from guilt, from fury. She had called the police on me. She had actually called the police. I called Claudette, who listened without interrupting and then said very calmly, she panicked. She lost her free childcare and she panicked. 2 days later, Tyler called me from his own little flip phone. Dominic had gotten it for him at the start of 3rd grade for emergencies. His voice was low, like he was trying not to be heard. Aunt Sandra, the police came to the house today. I know, buddy. It's going to be okay. I told them the tablet is in my room. And I told them you never take stuff that isn't yours. He paused. I told them a lot of things. My chest went tight. Tyler, you didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did, he said, with the particular matter-of-fact certainty that 8-year-olds sometimes have. It wasn't fair. The police case went nowhere, because there was no case. Sergeant Okonkwo called me a week later to say the complaint had been closed. No charges. No further inquiry. She didn't elaborate, but she didn't have to. I was in my apartment that night, editing photos from a small engagement shoot I'd booked, my first paid work in 3 weeks, when my phone lit up with a text from Dominic. It said, Rena went too far. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation, no context. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and went back to editing. What I didn't know then was that things at Dominic's house were already unraveling faster than either of them would admit to me. Claudette heard it secondhand, and then Tyler confirmed pieces of it during our calls. Rena's pregnancy was complicated. High blood pressure, doctor ordered reduced hours, and her job cut her back to part-time while she figured it out. Dominic picked up extra shifts to compensate, which meant he was home even less. Tyler was making breakfast now, the real version, not just pouring cereal, but scrambling eggs on the stove because nobody else was up to do it. He was 8 years old and making breakfast for his younger siblings before school. When Tyler told me that, I went still. I called Dominic that night. Not because I was ready to forgive Rena, not because I wanted to be pulled back into the same situation, but because Tyler was 8 and he shouldn't be carrying that. I'll come by after school every Tuesday and Thursday, I said. I'll make dinner those nights and help with homework. I'll bring groceries, but I'm not moving back. I'm not quitting anything. And you need to figure out childcare that doesn't depend on me. These are the terms. If they don't work, we can talk, but this is what I'm offering. Dominic said, Okay. He sounded exhausted and a little relieved, which made me sad for entirely different reasons. Rena didn't speak to me the first Tuesday I came over. She sat in the bedroom with the door mostly closed while I made pasta and helped Maya with a worksheet about state capitals. That was fine. I wasn't there for Rena. By the 3rd week, she came out and sat at the kitchen table while I cooked. She didn't apologize, but she asked me, in a tone that was more tired than hostile, if I thought Maya was getting enough to eat because she'd been refusing dinner most nights. She goes through phases, I said. Right now, she'll eat anything with pasta or rice. Try switching to those for a few weeks. Rena nodded. We didn't say much else. I kept my terms. Tuesdays and Thursdays, no overnights, no permanent commitment. I picked up a second part-time photography client, a small business that needed quarterly headshots, which added about $400 a month to my income. By my 3rd month in the apartment, I was covering rent comfortably and had started rebuilding a small savings cushion. Claudette started checking in less frequently because there was less to worry about, which she pointed out was a good sign. You sound like yourself again? She said during one of our calls. You sounded hollow for a long time. I hadn't realized it myself until she named it. Rena had the baby in the spring. A girl. And they named her June. Tyler called me from the hospital waiting room, whispering updates like a sports commentator. Maya asked me over video chat if babies come out knowing how to walk, and I spent 15 minutes explaining human development to a 5-year-old, which was genuinely one of my favorite conversations in recent memory. Eli was furious about the new baby for approximately 1 week, and then decided he was now the big brother, and that this was a promotion he'd earned. I went to meet June on her 4th day home. I held her for a few minutes while Rena rested. She was small and red-faced and smelled the way all new babies smell, which I have no words for but is completely distinct. Dominic sat across from me looking stunned by the particular exhaustion of a newborn in the house. You doing okay? I asked. No, he said honestly, which was more than I'd expected. You'll figure it out, I said. It's harder than people tell you, but you'll figure it out. I didn't offer to stay longer. I kissed June on the top of her head, hugged the kids, and drove back to my apartment, where I had a client's photos to edit and leftover soup on the stove, and a plant on the windowsill that I'd kept alive for 3 months, which felt like a personal achievement. Rena never fully apologized for the police call. She said something once. A few months later, when we were alone in the kitchen and the kids were watching a movie, she said, I was scared and I handled it badly. I looked at her for a second and then I said, Yeah, you did. And then I went back to making tea. It wasn't the dramatic reconciliation. It wasn't the tearful hug and a speech about forgiveness. But it was real, and I'd learned by then that real is usually quieter than the movies make it look. The photography business came back slower than I'd hoped and faster than I'd feared. A former client referred me to a nonprofit that needed event coverage for their annual gala, and that led to 2 more nonprofit clients. And by fall, I had enough monthly work to cut my print shop hours in half. I was shooting more, editing more, pitching more. My studio apartment, which had been just a mattress and a folding table when I moved in, had a proper bed, a second-hand couch, and a corkboard above my desk covered in mood boards and shot lists, and a photo Tyler had drawn of me holding a camera, surrounded by stars, which I'd had to explain to my last date was the most important piece of art in the apartment. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet, but I was moving, which was the thing I'd stopped doing for 2.5 years without fully realizing it. Tyler came to stay with me one Saturday while Dominic and Rena took the little ones to a birthday party. We ordered pizza, watched a documentary about the ocean that he chose and I genuinely enjoyed, and he showed me a short story he'd written for class about a girl who builds a rocket ship out of things people threw away. I read every word of it. This is really good, I said. Meaning it, I know, he said. The way only 8-year-olds can pull off without sounding arrogant. I laughed until my eyes watered. He looked pleased with himself and asked for a second slice of pizza. Some nights I still tally things up in my head. The months, the mornings, the money I spent that nobody will ever pay back. And sometimes I get angry about it all over again, which I think is probably fair. But then I think about Tyler helping me carry boxes to a cargo van, and Eli pressing a plastic dinosaur into my hands, and Maya drawing the two of us in front of a purple house. And I think the kids and we're going to be okay. We were always going to be okay. It's just that now, so am I. I keep thinking about that plastic dinosaur Eli pressed into my hands on moving day. He didn't understand what was happening. Not really. He just knew I was leaving and he wanted some part of himself to come with me. That small gesture, from a 3-year-old who couldn't articulate any of it, said more about what we'd built together than 2.5 years of mornings and school runs and scroll-muns and screet-knees ever could. Here's what I've come to understand about the situation I was in. It didn't happen because Dominic and Rena were evil people. It happened because I let it. Not out of weakness. Out of love, which can look a lot like weakness from the outside, but feels completely different on the inside. I loved those kids. I still do. And because I loved them, I kept saying yes, long after yes had stopped being a choice and started being an assumption. There's a difference between giving freely and giving because no one around you believes you're allowed to stop. I'd crossed that line so gradually I hadn't noticed until I was standing in their kitchen being told to quit my job and hand over $350 a month for the privilege of doing it. What saved me wasn't anger, though I had plenty of that. It was something quieter. The moment I finally sat down with a notepad and did the math. Not just the financial math, though that was damning enough. The life math. Hours spent on other people's routines versus hours spent building anything of my own. The number was not close, and once I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Tyler standing in front of those police officers and telling the truth, that the tablet was in his room, that I'd never taken anything that wasn't mine, that wasn't just an 8-year-old defending his aunt. That was the result of 2.5 years of showing up honestly. Kids notice everything. They notice who keeps their promises, who shows up when it's inconvenient, who tells them the truth in words they can actually understand. I hadn't just been their caregiver. I'd been, without planning it that way, an example. And when the moment came that required someone to be honest at some personal cost, Tyler knew exactly what to do. That's not coincidence. That's the long, invisible return on doing the right thing. Even when nobody's watching. The harder lesson, the one I'm still working on, is that caring for yourself isn't the opposite of caring for others. I spent 2 years treating those as mutually exclusive, as if my photography and my savings account and my 8 hours of sleep were luxuries I could sacrifice without consequence. They weren't luxuries. They were the foundation. When I let them erode, I didn't become more available to the people I loved. I became less. Hollower, as Claudette put it. You can't pour from something empty, which is one of those phrases that sounds like a coffee mug but turns out to be just true. What I know now, sitting in my apartment with mood boards on the wall and Eli's dinosaur on my desk, the grit it takes to start over, really start over, with a depleted savings account and a bruised sense of your own worth, is something you only discover by actually doing it, not by planning to, not by thinking about it at midnight while kids are asleep down the hall, by doing it. And the version of yourself that comes out the other side of that decision is clearer about what she's willing to give and to whom and why. That clarity is worth more than I can calculate. I built something real. Nobody handed it to me, and nobody can take it back.